Hello, New Zealand. We finally made it. Welcome to episode 99. You know what that means. If you don't, I'll tell you at the end of the program. And apologies, we had some technical issues. Our service just did not want to work. I think it might be because of who's on the panel. We'll check that shortly. So if you are watching on YouTube, I don't know how it is because we're not on YouTube. You need to come to Facebook. Anyway, for those who are watching in this episode, we're going to discuss the latest political polls and is Luxon really toast as the media want you to believe? Is Te Pati Maori imploding before our eyes? Would there really be peace in Gaza? And just how much credit should President Trump get for the peace plan? We'll ask the panellists on that. A new survey points to who thinks political violence may be warranted. The results from New Zealand and the US are very similar. Can we be friends with people who disagree with us politically? Once again, the surveys say that people of a certain political persuasion say you can't. Can you guess who? And the politicians have removed the ban on television advertising on Sunday mornings, Christmas, and other public holidays, which would include Easter. Is nothing sacred anymore, or doesn't it matter because nobody's watching live TV anymore? Right, without further ado, let's meet our panel who have completely destroyed the internet. They've exploded because they saw who was on. Firstly, Ashley Church in Hawke's Bay. How are you, Ashley?
Oh, look, I'm good, mate. But listen, you've been mucking around, preening, doing your hair over the last 10 or 12 minutes. I'm seriously thinking of laying a complaint with the Broadcasting Standards Authority.
I can't wait to hear from them. I'm trying to put a message on YouTube to say come to Facebook, but I don't know if I can get the invite. I'll try to do that anyway. Simon O'Connor is finally back from his junket. How are you, Simon?
I'm doing well, but having moved house, I was saying to you guys before we started, I don't have an iron or an ironing board here in the new house, so I'm reduced to wearing a T-shirt with my best Miami Vice look.
Okay, very trendy. Let's go to the better-looking ladies. Susie Miller in South Auckland. How are you, Susie?
I'm good. What's Miami Vice? I'm too young.
You're too young, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Okay, sorry, I'm just...
Good. I'm good.
Okay.
We're finally on. I nearly went back to play volleyball. Hi from Manurewa.
Okay, how's the Achilles and the calf?
I'm perfectly fit. I don't know what
Stretched.
you're insinuating.
Okay. And Dr. Ate Moala, how are you, Ate?
Malolele, I'm good. Good news, 9 weeks until Christmas.
Is it? Oh, we were talking about that this morning. My kids want the Christmas tree up next week. I can't believe it. So I'm just trying to ignore them. Anyway, look, I don't think YouTube's working, so I've left a message. So hopefully everybody will come across. We'll keep trying anyway. All right. Look, I'll show you the image of the day very quickly. Firstly, this is the one of the images of the week, and that is that we've had more than 500,000 views of Isi and Zara's testimonies. So it's got the conversation going, which was never allowed to be told. That is very good news. The other image of the day is obviously the big news this morning was the Louvre Museum in France was broken into in broad daylight with a ladder up the side of the building. So I have contacted the French government and offered Inspector Clouseau to find out who actually did it. So anyway, good day for the French. No further comment. All right, let's get into the topics. And firstly, let's just have a look at the political polls. I'm interested to see. I think I would just sum it up with these two graphs. So firstly, there is this one that says that since the election, National has lost 7 points, Labor has gained 7, New Zealand First has gone up 5. So New Zealand First seems to have taken Nationals, and Greens have gone down 3, so maybe Labor have taken some of theirs and some of the other parties. And the other graph is just, this is the average of all the polls that have been coming out last week. And if you average them all out, you can see that National's just sort of sliding a little bit. Labor's a little bit, well, sort of consistent, averagely. But it's that black line of New Zealand First that has done very well since the end of last year. So it's 11 months. So let's get straight into it. Ashley, what do you take from these polls? Can we take anything, or is it just, I mean, it's probably about just over a year, or it's about a year that we'll be in the voting booth.
They're certainly becoming more meaningful as we get closer to the election. There's a couple of things that conspire against a left-wing government, though. The first of those is that National overall, I think, is still just marginally keeping its, or the coalition is marginally keeping its nose in front. Probably more importantly, though, as we get closer to the election and we get more scrutiny around Te Pati Maori and their role in the potential coalition, and the Greens, the Nutters and the Lunatics and the Greens, that's a particularly unattractive looking option for most punters. What's interesting, though, I was thinking about this the other day in terms of the role that Luxon's playing in these results, because clearly he is holding back the National Party, and I suspect that if they had a different leader and somebody who was resonating more, then they would be polling better. And so, if you look at where they are now, it's a very similar situation to the one that Labor found themselves in prior to the last election, where Ardern was extraordinarily unpopular. They exited her. They brought in Hipkins, and his job primarily was basically to keep the vote from completely collapsing. Here's the difference, though: Ardern was hated. Luxon's not hated. I think most people think he's a reasonable bloke. He's just not resonating with the public. And secondly, I think Labor was hated to a greater or lesser degree. I don't think people hate National. They're just frustrated that they're not doing what they expected, the public expected of them at this stage in their first term. So I'm quite optimistic. Is probably the wrong word, but I'm not I'm not panicking quite yet.
Okay, well, you've actually morphed into our next topic. So just before I just go to Simon, I just want to show you this poll. No, it's not that one. It's this one. This is the One News poll. And at the moment, Luxon is still the most preferred Prime Minister. So that sort of goes against the narrative, doesn't it? The media narrative.
No, it doesn't, because it does in the sense that he's highest. But what's traditionally happened, and I'll be interested in Simon's comment on this. What in my lifetime, generally, once you become prime minister, you shoot up in the preferred prime minister polls, and you stay miles ahead of any of the other parties for a very long period of time until close to the end of your term. Whereas this guy's been sitting at or around similar figures to Hipkins. So this is really unusual. Nothing like I've seen in my lifetime.
Okay, my theory is that Luxon has never got above 25% and he never will, but he'll still win the election. What do you reckon, Simon?
Yeah, well, in many ways echoing a lot of what's being said. I mean, at the end of the day, New Zealand is not a presidential system. You vote for a political party, and in some ways it's just a consequence of who the leader is. Of course, there's a relationship there. If the leader is popular, that flows into the party vote. But there's been plenty of examples of unpopular prime ministers, and yet their parties go on to win. I think Jim Bolger's government's actually an example of that. The second one is, look, right from day one, there's been a negative narrative on Luxon. I think, unfortunately for him now, it's a narrative which is almost set in concrete, so I don't expect to see things increase for him there. And the other point is very much validating, from my perspective, what Ashley said. You expect the Prime Minister's rating to be much, much higher. We basically just, as Kiwis, go, look, whoever is the Prime Minister is that preferred person by and large, and everyone else comes a very distant second, third, and fourth. And yet, only other observation I'd make in general around the polls is wait for the tension probably next year to grow between the likes of New Zealand First and National. Because as you say, Bob, at the moment, National's vote is by and large going across to New Zealand First, partly out of policy, partly out of frustration. But for those National MPs, particularly the list MPs, as the party vote keeps going down, the overall win of the centre-right, which is probably still on the cards, won't be enough. Because if National was polling under 30%, goodbye to all your listies. No Nicola Willis, no Brownlee, no Goldsmith. And not just they, but the wider group will become very frustrated. And all those wannabe list MPs, not a chance. And so those tensions will begin developing. But the former politician in me is doing exactly what we do too much, which is speaking too much. So I should hand over to the ladies.
Okay. Susie, do you think, or what do you think of the general polls? And do you think Christopher Luxon is toast, or is this just a media narrative?
Yeah, I trust the polls about the same way I trust media. I think it's an obvious attempt by them at rearranging the House. They hate Luxon, they always have. I don't trust the polls because I've heard people have been sort of cut off when they've started to say that they're national voters. Anyway, that's rumour. But speaking of rumour, media sows discord all the time. And so it's a manipulation of the masses. And they, they're always displaying contempt for New Zealand's conservative voters and national voters. And yeah, I think if Nationals list MPs aren't going to make it. I hope New Zealand First has really good list MPs because I think they're going to do well. Obviously, National's voters have drifted to New Zealand First because National have just continually displayed a drift to the left. And so they're paying for it. They don't look like they're trying to set the ship right. They should have alarm bells going off, but if they want to exist as a minor major party, keep doing what they're doing and hiding behind Winston, they're pretty chicken. And so they wait to see if he's going to be hated or praised, and just let him take all the heat. If that's what they want to do, this is going to be the end result. The polls will keep looking like this.
Okay, and well done. That complaint to the BSA has worked because we're now on YouTube. So welcome to our YouTube watchers. So we've got everything back up and running. It just reminds me, actually, so this is episode 99, episode number 2. So our second episode, about 20 minutes before we came on live, the whole computer blew up completely. So we actually bought 2 replacements just to be safe. It's never blown up since. But anyway, this wasn't our computer's fault. This was Restream's fault. Anyway, we are here. Ate, do you think in a year we're really facing the possibility that we're going to have a 3-headed monster government of Labour, Greens and Te Pati Maori? Should we be panicking already? All off to Tonga?
Definitely not. I don't trust the polls, and it's too early. I agree with what's been said. I think Luxon, I don't think people hate him, but hopefully if the economy improves, he may be okay. But if not, and if Nicola gets in, he may roll Luxon. I don't know. But I think what's has become quite apparent is that people are wanting people who are courageous, and that's what Winston is showing. And I think that's why some of the shift that we're seeing already. And I just hope that people will still remember the mess that Labour government and Chris Hipkins had done. And if he comes in, I'm not sure what he's going to do apart from increasing taxes and more borrowing.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, Ashley, it does really seem, though, that the media are working pretty hard. Look, especially Stuff. They have just been constantly going at Luxon. Basically, every day there's an article saying how he sucks. And then they did a poll and they found out that only a quarter of National voters would prefer a different leader, but all voters said, no, what was it? 49% of voters said that Luxon should go. Well, as I said to Simon last week, Ashley, if I was asked who should be the leader of the Greens, I would say Chloe and Marama, because I think they are so wacky that they're likely to do more damage than if they get a seasoned head person like James Shaw, a James Shaw type leader. So yeah. Why are we listening to people who aren't even going to vote for National? Surely the key people are National voters.
I agree, and I think probably what those polls do with National or coalition party voters to a greater degree is they shake us up a little bit, and because we're all a bit nervous at the moment at the prospect. I don't think any of us really seriously think that's going to happen. Incidentally, what I find interesting about that part of the conversation is that when we look at the media, Stuff, 2 or 3 of the other outlets, they can say what they like because they're private companies. But there's a really strong argument that the government, the current government, should actually be reforming the remit of Radio New Zealand and TVNZ, at least to the extent that they force them to make sure that they are unbiased and that they give balance to what they're doing. And that's Goldsmith. Goldsmith's not doing anything. He's basically sitting back and watching it happen. So in that regard, I don't have a lot of sympathy with the government because they actually have within their means the ability to at least move the debate slightly back to the middle of the spectrum, and they're not doing so.
Yeah. Okay, Simon, I mean, do you feel that the media is just hammer and tongs for Luxon? It's just, story after story. They're trying to say that, they go to this poll and they say, oh, Chris Bishop is a shoo-in because, wow, stunning 16% want him as the leader of National. I mean, that's just laughable, isn't it?
It is, but on the other hand, this is political reality. And so, when we're in Parliament and we see bad polls and so forth, you can lament it, quite rightly, you can be very frustrated at the media and its prejudice and its bias, but it's also just reflecting a narrative which is getting traction. So I'm not here to defend the media's bias in this space, but it's easy writing for the journalists and reporters at the moment. There's no shortage of content which they can derive from it, and they're just going to keep going until really the issue is cauterized. And that's why I said earlier, unfortunately, I think for Luxon and for the National Party, it's not a narrative that they can cauterize now. I think there comes a point where it just gets set in concrete. You can ameliorate it somewhat, but it just is what it is. And yeah, I could probably go around in circles repeating the same thing, but the media run with stories they find easy to write.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, as you observe this, Susie, do you think the media are going after Luxon, or is he genuinely unpopular?
They're making it so, almost. It depends on who you talk to. And you talk to people in the education circles and people that, are really informed by unions, informed by media, who trust the media. They hate him for no reason. And so blind falling blind.
Yeah. I'll tell you, if you were giving advice to Luxon, what would you tell him in terms of if he wants to be re-elected? Nicely.
I think you need to do a little bit more action. You need to come forward, and and he need to show up a bit more.
Yeah.
Can I just add to that? Because the issue I think they've currently got, and Luxon kind of personifies it, but it's not just him, is they're missing out on the stuff around the optics. So if you look at what they're doing as a party at the fundamental level in terms of economic reform, they're actually doing some fantastic work. And there's some stuff they're putting in place at the moment that's going to make an enormous difference to this country if it's allowed to grow over the next 3 or 4 years. It's the optics. It's the stuff that you do that isn't necessarily fundamental to changing the country, but gives the impression to the people that support you that you're in control, that you're the leader, and that you're taking decisive actions on issues that you know are important to them. And that's the stuff that Luxon doesn't seem to be good at.
Can I just add a little bit?
Yeah.
Just sorry, I know we're pressed for time. This is where it's actually not fully Luxon or even the MP's fault, and it's not trying to throw a lot of mud around, but actually it is their wider teams, their press teams, their social media teams. Because I agree with Ashley, there's a lot of good, but the optics ain't well done, and so that it does land with Luxon, the ministers, the MPs, but there is the wider choices they're making around the stuff to sell those messages.
Yeah. Okay, let's just talk about Te Pati Maori, because they seem to be trying to shoot themselves in the foot constantly. Firstly, there was obviously this issue with the Te Pati Maori MP. She was demoted, and then somehow her finances were leaked, and we found out she'd been overspending. Simon, we might need to get a bit of technical detail from you. We've got this
from my years of multiple overspending. Are you suggesting?
Yeah, that's right. We've also got this one. He's basically saying that if you're not Maori, you can't help Maori get elected. And then there's missing financials as well. And then we had that incredible scene. I mean, I don't know if you remember when Musk got into all this trouble for doing a Nazi salute, and the media were apoplectic about it. And then, blow me down, a new Te Pati Maori MP comes in and does exactly the same. I don't know what's going on in Te Pati Maori, but they seem to be in big trouble. Maybe I'll start with the ladies because I'll be nice. Susie, is Te Pati Maori imploding, or is this just, hustle and bustle of politics in your view?
Well, they seem to thrive on negative attention, and hopefully they're smart enough to know that, if they split, they all lose and everything goes to Labour. I think the more they act up, the more they divide Māori voters. I can see it on the socials. There's quite a few more voices who are just saying things like, show us the books, like show us what you've been doing, more transparency, less of the theatrics. And these are young Māori who are saying this kind of thing. So, accusations of a dictatorship model, leadership followed by Debbie being manhandled by Rawiri on camera.
Yeah.
You got to see this stuff. You got to notice this stuff. Then, she's accused of overspending, which Simon's going to explain to us later. But then this afternoon she comes out and says, I was supporting my colleague Tasha Kemp and, just sort of giving a bit more flesh to the accusations, and it was approved by Speaker Brownlee and all this kind of thing. So they're a Netflix drama at this point, and Māori are beginning to get annoyed. I can't predict. I can't tell whether their supporters are still on board with them, whether they won't, keep voting emotionally and will start to have common sense voting. So, but you got to ask yourself, are they respecting Māori? What have they actually done for us?
Okay, Ate, the argument would be that they're kind of against the establishment, they're anti-establishment, they are activists in some way, and therefore when their MPs act anti-establishment and when they're activists themselves, actually they attract voters. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's so sad, their disgrace, the way they carry on. Just not showing any respect. When you look back and you think of when they started, people like Peter Sharples, Dame Tariana, these people were wonderful people. They care for their people. Whereas it's a huge contrast with these clowns now. When I just remembered Peter Sharples, he was such a father-like and just genuinely care, just like Tariana. People like Monty Ohia, and I think if they just get a grip and start thinking about why they're there, and rather than just being antagonistic, which is really sad. Yeah, and the only good words that Winston Peters called the cowboy hat is Mr. Sunshine.
Ashley, just before I come to you, I just want to show you this little clip of just sort of the trouble they're getting into and interestingly, the threats of violence, because we are going to talk about political violence, but this was just the excerpt from the media report.
As the government unveiled its budget in May last year, Te Pati Maori and Toitū Te Tiriti led protest outside Parliament. It was also the day Toitū Te Tiriti spokesman Eru Kapakingi, son of MP Mariamino Kapakingi, allegedly tailgated through Parliament security, refusing to use his own Parliament access card. A letter Te Pati Maori claims is from Parliamentary Services alleges Kapakingi abused security staff using vulgar language, racism and threats of physical abuse, allegedly calling a security guard a white bald-head, adding, "I will knock you out."
Okay, now I'm a bit confused, Ashley, because Marama Davidson, who I trust implicitly, said that only cis white men cause violence. So what's going on here?
Oh, no, it is very confusing. Listen, I reckon, just picking up on what Susie said, I reckon up until this brouhaha developed within the party over the last few weeks, I would have argued that they knew exactly what they were doing and that their constituency is not Susie, and it's not sort of right-minded, sensible thinking people. It was very clearly on young Māori, disaffected Māori having their first or second vote under 25 years of age who were absolutely responding. And the reason that they were doing the stuff that they were doing, the theatrics in Parliament, basically giving the middle finger to the Speaker and to the country in general, all of that was deliberate, because every time they did that and then apologised to the Speaker, meanwhile their support was going up another couple of percentage points. That's now changed. So now we've got a situation where we've got internal fighting within the party. We've got stuff coming out that they've been able to keep undercover for the last couple of years. It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. It's going to be interesting to see whether those young people that I talked about, who are primarily their current supporters, stick with the party regardless. And there's a possibility that they will, because they don't really notice this stuff. They don't consume the normal media. Or whether this is going to have the effect that Susie's indicating, which is that people are going to say, hey, show us the goods or you won't get support. But right now, there was an election held right now, I suspect that they would probably make a clean sweep of all 7 seats, regardless.
Okay, yeah, interesting. And that would mean Overhang would have 3 extra MPs, maybe. Simon, given your experience with financial irregularities, just wondering, political experience, just wondering if you could just explain what's going on here. So basically, Te Pati Maori, they seem to have missing financials and by-election issues. Don't seem to be held that accountable for that. And this demoted Te Pati Maori MP now, the latest statement that just came out said that it was because she was looking after Takatai Tash Kemp. So the MP for Tamaki Makaurau, she sadly passed away. And so Marimena Kapakingi is trying to argue that she was picking up the gap until Irini Kaipara was voted in, the new MP. And yeah, do you buy that?
Yeah. No, not really. Partly because of the scale of the overspend. So I think people have to understand most MPs, I mean, we get paid or did get paid, but to run your office, you get about $55,000 a year. Now, to a lot of people, that might sound like a lot of money, but by the time you've rented your office space, you paid for the electricity, you paid for the photocopier and paper and all of this, it goes quite quickly. But what we're suggesting here is that a Māori Party MP spent 200% more than that. I mean, that's a pretty extraordinary skill to spend that amount of money. I suspect she was tapping into the Whips Fund or the Leaders Fund. So each MP, if you will, has a bucket of money, but the leaders of parties have a much bigger budget as well. And so I suspect with her role as the whip, she was signing that off. Procedurally, theoretically, parliamentary service then approves everything at the end of the month, which is probably why she's making the claim that the Speaker said it was okay. I think she's just playing up on technicalities there. Now, exactly where the money went, there's some suggestion she was paying her son. If that's the case, that should not have been allowed. You're not meant to hire family members. So it's all very dirty and messy. But two last very, very quick points. And it's a slight nuance on what Ashley was saying. I think a lot of what the Māori Party does is deliberate theatrics and provocations. But what ultimately drives that is an entitlement and an arrogance and a belief that the rules don't apply to you. And that's the dynamic which has inevitably led them to where they are now. Lots of that tribal infighting, a belief that the law doesn't apply to them. Doesn't matter if it's the fraud at Mararewa Marae, what we're discussing here, or one you didn't quickly touch on, which only came out today, is Debbie Ngariwa Paka has not declared properties she owns. And so you've got this, again, an arrogance and entitlement. But sadly, in my opinion, there are a lot of disaffected, particularly young Māori, who are attracted to that. And it really behoves us as a society to better understand the why and try to draw those sort of young rangatahi, actually a bit of a tautology there, but to bring those rangatahi back to something I think is more sensible.
Okay, the behaviour in the House hasn't been helped. Te Pati Maori, the new MP, Irini Kaipara, she comes in and she doesn't follow the rules. I want to ask the ladies this, Ate, is the behaviour worsening, or do we need to relax a little bit in Parliament as to the expectation of rules? So, they did this beautiful waiata. Irini had already overspoken by 5 minutes, which is a no-no. Bells had been ringing, she ignored it, and then they break into a haka and they're not supposed to. Ate, do you think we need to be more stringent, or does Parliament need to learn to hang loose a bit more?
Well, they need to throw them out. I mean, it's just utter disrespect. I mean, we won't, hold up if it's, white Pākehās doing that. So why do we have a different rule for Māori when there's utter disrespect? Throw them out.
Okay, that's pretty clear. Susie, do you agree with that, or you want to be nicer to them? A bit of flexibility.
Well, it's disrespectful to your voters because they voted you to come into Parliament, conduct yourself the way Parliament should. So Parliament's got its own tikanga. If you don't do that, then your arguments won't get heard and you won't get the business done, will you? It's just crazy. I heard that you could have asked, it's not like waiata and haka aren't allowed. It just has to be passed through Brownlee and just, communicated first. So it's on purpose, just being rebellious.
Okay, and Simon, my understanding is that they'd already made an arrangement that normally first speeches, what do you call them?
Maiden
speech. Gosh, that's a bit misogynist. Maiden speeches are normally not at that time, and they'd specifically shifted things around already, and then they go and abuse it even more.
It comes back to the point that others have mentioned. It's all about theatrics. It's anything to pick a fight and get a cheap headline. Look, let's be really clear. There's no problem with waiata and haka in Parliament. We've seen other Pacifica cultures. I mean, I could stand up and sing a Latin hymn if I wanted. These are welcome.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not being silly. There's opportunity. I mean, I didn't take the chance to do it. I didn't want to offend my Protestant friends. But there is scope within Parliament. There really is. But this is just a direct affront to the Speaker and a giant middle finger to New Zealanders because they went against their word. And the other really, really quick point, because I can see Ashley's been wanting to add to this as well. Parliament only works with limited time. If Te Pati Maori want to spend the hours a year that Parliament has singing their little songs and giving their speeches, which half the time are going around in circles, that's all fine. But we just won't be able to govern the country and get anything done. And so they were wasting the time of Parliament where we want to address education and health and transport and defence and so on and so forth. So they're wasting time doing this for their own self-narcissistic indulgence.
Ashley?
Oh, I always have to say something, Bob, that's going to upset your listeners, your viewers. So I do take Susie's point about Parliament's tikanga, but that tikanga is overwhelming. And I take Simon's point. I understand that waiata, etc., and haka are allowed in Parliament with permission. But the tikanga of our Parliament is overwhelmingly influenced by Westminster, by the Westminster system and the British system that it comes from. And I would argue pretty strongly that there is a case to look at that and actually have a good hard look at it to see whether or not that tikanga could be more representative of New Zealand. We're not Poms. This is New Zealand. And it may well be, maybe not in the context of this, because this is just rudeness, but certainly looking at the parliamentary procedures that we have at the moment to see whether or not they can be more inclusive. Because here's the thing, if you do that, then it takes the power out of these theatrics and these performative antics and actually just brings it into the normal behaviour of Parliament.
But my argument is that they're anti-establishment, they are radical, so actually this just actually pleases their audience, doesn't it?
Well, that's true. So they win either way, unfortunately. Yeah.
Okay, look, we have got a few things actually running normally here, and I just want to give this quote. Shirley says Simon should stand up and sing a Latin hymn because we need the entertainment.
Right now.
Yeah. No, please not now. And this one I thought was quite funny. From Concerned Voter, this came through our YouTube account. Sorry to be missing out. Don't have Facebook, so see you next week. Concerned Voter, we're on YouTube. You just made a comment on YouTube, so we're there. Okay, so hang in there. We are there. I can see all the people watching on YouTube, so everything is back up and working. Gordon's been working flat out in the background, so we are there. And for those who missed the start, this is episode number 99, so that means we've got a special announcement coming up. Right, let's go on to Ashley's favourite topic. Will there be peace in Gaza? I just want to show a few images just to wind Ashley up. Firstly, Trump, who brought about the peace deal, where he said, "Blessed are the peacemakers," and America's fulfilling our destiny as a peacemaker. I don't think I've got any others to wind you up. Ashley, we will talk about, is Trump going to go to heaven, but we'll come back to that. Just talk about the Middle East, Ashley. Do you think there will be a peace deal, or are we all dreaming?
We're all dreaming. And let's be clear, this is a ceasefire. And credit to Trump for and he was the primary.
Sorry, what was that? Sorry.
But it was just a ceasefire.
I'm just noting the date and time.
It was, in fairness to him, it could never have been more than a ceasefire, because had he attempted to move beyond that to disarmament of Hamas and, dare I say it, some sort of peace deal, that would never have flown. The reason it wouldn't have flown is Hamas, by their very nature and by their own admission, have no interest in peace. They've made that very clear. Their motive, their remit, their entire rationale for existence is not just the elimination of Israel, but the killing, the death of every Jew on the face of the planet. They've made that very clear. That hasn't changed. Nothing's going to change about that. And the situation's not going to be any different as a result of this current ceasefire. So this will break down at some stage. But just to put that in some perspective, because it's not just Hamas, it's the entire Palestinian movement, including the Palestinian Authority. Every time there has been a peace deal put to the Palestinians whoever their leadership were at the time, they have rejected it. Let me just give you an indication now of how often that's happened, Bob. It happened in 1937 with the Peel Commission. The Palestinians walked away. 1947 with the UN Petition Plan. The 1967 Khartoum Summit. The 1991 Madrid Conference. The 2001 Arab Summit. The 2005 disengagement from Gaza by Israel. The 2007 Annapolis Conference. The 2008 Realignment Plan. The 2010 Joint Peace Talks. The 2013 Joint Peace Talks. The 2019 Bahrain Workshop. And the 2020 Trump Peace Plan. Every single time Israel signed up, said, yep, we're in, we'll take part in those peace negotiations, and the Palestinians walked away. They have no interest in peace. This will be no different.
So why did they sign the peace deal, and why did they give back hostages? What's their motive?
Well, they didn't sign a peace deal. They signed a ceasefire. And the reason they did that was because they were under enormous pressure from their primary funder, Qatar, who were under enormous pressure from Trump. So this was situational based on these circumstances. It was a one-off. This thing will break down. They'll be fighting again within 2 weeks.
Okay. Arte, do you think we have peace, or is it going to break down?
It's already broken down. And, just as Ashley said, all credit to Trump. I don't think it would have happened without him to bring the 20 alive hostages home. So, so happy about that. And they're celebrating. Of course, no one trusted Hamas. They signed the ceasefire under pressure, as Ashley have said, but they've already broken. I mean, they haven't released the deceased, the one that they have murdered. I think there's a 5 that has come home. So there's not going to be any peace. And for the reasons that Ashley have said, they just want to kill Jews. They want to annihilate Israel. And this has been going on for many, many years. The anti-Semitism is dark and it's evil. And, Jews are just being killed for being Jews. Nothing else. I mean, you don't do that to any other people, but so that's the problem. I went last Thursday to to the commemoration, the memorial service of the 7th October here in Wellington. Ashley was there, spoke really well. And it was just so sad that our Jewish communities throughout this nation are vilified, and it's just terrible. And I think I'll just encourage. I think for our young people, families we need to talk about it. We need to expose the lies, because our universities are absolutely poisoning the minds of our young people to hate Jews and just have joined these marches with not understanding what they're screaming about. But now they're not shouting about anything. Where are the shouters? So I think that's our responsibility in this nation to talk about it, and especially for our young people, and explain to them that it's not right that Jews are just killed for being Jews.
Okay, Susie, do you think we can get peace in Gaza?
No. They're already shooting people on the streets. They're monsters. And there's not a peep from the left about it. It just shows the virtue signaling hypocrisy of it all. I think the whole No Kings protest at the moment in America.
Got to do something.
Oh, yeah, but they had people there with No Israel, and just spreading more lies about how Israel's killing children. It's just utter trash, and anti-Semitism is rampant.
Getting worse.
It's a shocker.
Yeah.
But no, there will not be peace. But yay,
okay.
Trump. Good on him.
Okay, Simon, you have been involved in foreign affairs. Surely if the Arab countries are putting pressure on Palestine and on Hamas, isn't there some possibility of change?
No, unfortunately, no. They're definitely putting pressure on. Ashley's right. It's American pressure on the Qataris, who in turn are putting pressure on Hamas. There's still Iran in the equation. They're not part of this peace deal. And Hamas themselves have said in the last 12 hours, some of their spokespeople, they just want a breather. I mean, they didn't say it in English, but they just want a breather. And that's what they're obtaining at the moment, but they want to return to their goal. People need to understand, as I'm hopefully most are who are watching this, Hamas is a death cult, and particularly death of Jews, and they're not going to stop. And they're breaking the ceasefire already, obviously attacking Israeli positions, both, probably to try and provoke, to get the outrage which already, the left are returning to. They've already executed hundreds of their own citizens. and I want to use the word complicity of left-wing politicians and media here in New Zealand, which are basically saying nothing, as Gazans, Hamas Gazans, are killing other Gazans. And so it's just going to be an ongoing problem. Look, Trump should take some credit for this, but his ego is huge. And so calling himself a peacemaker and so forth, he's sort of echoing Richard Nixon, actually. It's premature, very, very premature. What will be interesting from here is, will Hamas's excesses only now be confronted by Israel, or will we actually see some American intervention? And will America demand that actually some of the Arab countries get involved? I think it's highly, highly unlikely, but I just think we'll probably see within a week almost a full resumption of fighting.
Yeah.
I'm sad to say.
Actually, it did remind me of, do you remember George W. Bush standing on the aircraft carrier after the statue had been toppled in Baghdad, declaring victory over Iraq? And really, that was actually the start of the whole deterioration. Look, I do want to ask a philosophical question. I'm going to come to you, Susie, first, being the kind of pastoral leader amongst us all. And it's the question is, what would you say to Trump? Because he's made a couple of comments about he wants to go to heaven, but he's not sure if he's going to. So he first raised it when he said this in a radio interview.
I just want to end it. I want to end it. You know, we're not losing American lives. We're not losing American soldiers. We're losing Russian and Ukrainian, mostly soldiers. Some people, as missiles hit wrong spots or get lobbed into cities like Kiev and towns. But, you know, if I can save 7,000 people a week from being killed, I think that's I want to try and get to heaven if possible. I'm hearing I'm not doing well. I hear I'm really at the bottom of the totem pole. But if I can get to heaven, this will be one of the reasons.
Okay, so that's one of the things he said, and then he sort of said on Air Force One, he was being a bit cute about it, which I thought was an interesting little admission. But it's interesting what he said when he was giving the Medal of Freedom to Charlie Kirk posthumously just last week. Have a listen
Christian
or watch.
Principles of our nation's founding, or to share his deep Christian faith. In his final moments, Charlie testified to the greatness of America and to the glory of our Savior, with whom he now rests in heaven. And he is going to make heaven. I said, I'm not sure I can make it, but he's going to make it. He's there. He's looking down on us right now. It's so incredible. Look at this, how this turned out. This was supposed to be so dark and cloudy. Not dark and cloudy, is it? Look at that, how beautiful that is.
So, Susie, what would you say to him, to Trump? You had a one-to-one.
Well, I'd say he's stepping in the right direction, not boasting that he can make it into heaven. It's by grace we're saved through faith, not from ourselves. It's a gift from God. And so not that any man should boast about his works. And so him not boasting about salvation, but boasting about everything else is refreshing. At least it also proves that penance theology is alive and well. He perhaps believes he's done too many bad things to be redeemed by good works. He's absolutely right about that. So I would tell him, Mr. Trump, repent of your sins, believe in Jesus, and give your life to him. You can do this.
Simon, it was interesting you said about his ego being big, because I think that's the observation of many people. Interestingly, when this whole debate came about, he's actually got a faith group that he's established, and they said that actually there's a deeper side of him, a more humble side of him that a lot of people don't see, and the fact that he's gathered around all these Christian leaders. Now, the cynical would say, well, it's just to get the religious vote. But do you think there's a side of Trump that we don't see? I mean, you would know from politics that there's a persona that you have in public which can be different from the private. That would be a fair statement, wouldn't it?
For many, but not all politicians. I mean, Trump is a very complicated character. I think there are multiple sides to him. You get a bit of a hint of some of that with the way he relates to his grandchildren. Look, I'm quite cynical when it comes to these faith topics. I think he's highly inconsistent. You know, think of the Charlie Kirk memorial where he says he hates his enemies. Just after, was it Eric who talked about we have to love our enemies? So he's all over the place. It's a bit contradictory. I think it is cute. I think it's a faux humility in some way. And that doesn't mean we run around and condemn him. I think, like Susie, you invite him to faith and to know the person of Christ. Granted, if I was with him, I'd be asking what orange products does he use, which probably wouldn't be the first principled question to ask. But I find a lot of this stuff, he's just all over the show. And I don't think he clearly knows where he stands on these things. So I personally wouldn't read into it too much.
Okay. Ashley, do you think there's a side of him that a lot of people don't understand or haven't seen?
Complex man. I think he's a very simple man. Far be it for me to opine on a man's heart and where he's at in relation to his maker. But if he doesn't know, if he doesn't think he's saved, he's not. Let's be clear. And most of the people watching this will be Christians. So what I'm about to say is really for the benefit of those who aren't. But very simple formula that Scripture gives us: believe in your heart, which is actually believe that Jesus Christ is Lord and that He died for your sins. Confess that, which is tell other people that you've done that. And then thirdly, crucially importantly, the bit that a lot of Christians miss, particularly evangelical Christians, then continue to live in His Father's will for the rest of your life. Basically focus your life on doing His will rather than doing the things that you would have done yourself. I don't think Trump qualifies on those. I don't know. Maybe he does. Maybe he hides it very well. But if he's telling us that he doesn't know if he's a Christian, he ain't.
If he can get a peace deal in Gaza, does that help him?
It's not about works. It's about your relationship with God. It's got nothing. I mean, those things are great, but that's not how you get to be saved.
I'll tell you, what would you say to him if you had one-to-one?
Well, my prayer is that some of his Christian advisors will tell him what Susie and Ashley have said to clarify it for him. I mean, he's smart. So and that's my prayer, that somebody will tell him the truth and explain to him that it's by grace that we're saved, through faith, not by works. Simple.
Okay. Some good comments coming through here, actually. Let me just get a couple of them. Matthew says, does he understand what grace is? Who is teaching him the word of God? Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. What a foretaste of heaven divine. Timothy says, Trump is known to be a little too generous, a little too brave, but always funny. Shirley reckons he's surrounded himself with false teachers and heretics. Stacey says, of course there's a deeper side of him. There's a deeper side of all of us. And Justine says, Ate, Christians are killed in Nigeria just for being Christians, but we don't care because they aren't Jews. Well, we do actually. It's the media that doesn't care. Rosie reckons actions speak louder than words. Well, it's probably a bit of both, maybe. Oh, here we go. We've got a faith argument now. Faith not works. Sorry, I don't agree with that. Ashley, you're saying that faith, the works is as a result of the faith, isn't it? Not the other way around. Yeah. Okay. Right. Before we get into a massive theological debate, I've got a couple of other topics, and we're just going to take a little bit of extra time, if that's okay, panel, because we did start 10 to 15 minutes late. So I'm going to just grab an extra 10 minutes because I do want to cover this topic about violence. 1 in 7 Kiwis believe violence may be needed to get the country back on track. Now, that's according to a poll that was done by the Dominion Post. And when you drill down into the figures, you actually find that the highest proportion of those who think violence is okay, political violence, is Te Pati Maori supporters. The second highest group was ACT supporters, and then I think it went down to it was Labour and National, New Zealand First, and then surprisingly, Green voters were the least, which I found slightly interesting. Now, that is interesting because you've got a lot of Te Pati Maori, you've got Rory Waititi wanting to give David Seymour a good hiding with his lawnmower. You've got this kind of imagery with the activation for the hikoi. Marama Davidson from the Greens shared this. I know it's going to be hard not to punch David Seymour and Winston. So that kind of narrative is there. I had a look just at some overseas data, and it came up with the same type of thing. So this is support for political violence, and the dark blue is very liberal people. And if you go to the right, the further right you go, you get more conservative. So the more liberal you are, the more likely you are to think that political violence is okay. I'll just show you one more graph just for the sake of time. I just want to find the age one. Here we are. So Gen Z, the youngest age, are more likely to think political violence is okay. The millennials, slightly less. by the time you get to the baby boomers, they've got to get the Zimmer frame out of the way, so therefore they're not into violence. That's my excuse anyway. I pull a muscle just getting out of the chair. Susie, why do you think that young left-wing voters are the most likely, not all, but sort of disproportionately most likely to think political violence is a solution?
I think it's what's been modelled and what's being largely, told that is necessary. Like I, sadly, have heard way too much rhetoric, even in education circles. Protesting is the only way. You got to get out there and have your say, and that's the only way you'll be heard. But I did sort of have a bit of an issue with the statement that was asked of all the interviewees, and it's suggestive. Like it's like, well, if we're asking this, then violence has to be put out there as an option, and everybody should be thinking about this. I'm like, those surveyed would have had to ask two questions, like, what does back on track look like? Okay, how are we off track, and then what kind of violence do you mean? And so I'm heartened by the fact that only 1 in 7 New Zealanders deem violence necessary, because I think on the whole, New Zealanders are more compassionate than Americans, I hope. They don't agree with violence, like against the protesters on the Parliament grounds. I think largely New Zealanders were like, that is off. That's why Jacinda Ardern is still not popular now. And we didn't appreciate the violence against women at the Posipaka rally. Te Pati Maori do believe that that's the way, and they're loud and proud about it, but I don't think that's the way they all believe. And it's interesting that the Greens were like, no, we don't believe in violence. But where was Marama Davison at the Posipaka rally? Anyway, I'm talking in circles a little bit, but it's an interesting topic. I'm concerned about the questioning.
Okay, I was just interested so it was 1 in 7. You've got about a third of very liberal think political. You can do damage property on the right, it's violence. I mean, 44%, that's almost half of very liberal people overall. That's quite high. Ashley, what do you think? Why is it people tend to be on the left that think that it's a solution, political violence?
Oh, well, it's a lack of a moral base. It's a lack of God in their lives and a moral base that actually gives them some sort of regulation, personal regulation over their own activity. I'm not surprised, but I'm actually quite concerned. 1 in 7 to me is huge. And if you went back 10 years, I suspect you'd find that number would have been much, much lower. I'm actually really concerned about this. I mean, and I took it to mean actual violence. So when you're talking to Pāti Maori, for example, the rhetoric that the Māori Party is using in relation to the young people that support them, the disaffected people who are being told that all of their problems are being caused by, the white man's society, that has a real chance of turning into real physical violence. With ACT supporters who would also fit that definition, it's just the lack of God. It's the lack of the moral compass in their lives that determines what should regulate. I'm not surprised at those Green results, because the Greens are overwhelmingly made up of women. So they would tend to, I suspect, probably a bit of a generalization, but they would tend to focus less on physical violence and more on other means. But it's interesting because we as Christians need to not be too smug about this, because Luke 14:26, he said, Jesus said, if anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, you cannot be my disciple. So I mean, fits us as well. The difference being there, of course, he wasn't talking about literally hating them. He was talking about putting him before other interests. But this is a real concern, and my worry is that if this carries on and these numbers continue to increase, then in 3 to 4 years we might be looking at civil war and insurrection.
I was interested just in your comment about gender breakdown, and I've actually got that. So this is the American data, but as you can see, it's sort of similar to New Zealand, and you'll see there that liberal women in the pink on the left there are just as likely to think violence is acceptable as males, moderate male and conservative. So the least likely is Ate and Susie, 13% of Ate's and Susie. So that's good news, because I'd hate to have a fight with Ate and Susie.
So one comment I was going to make, if you look at the just we were talking about anti-Semitism before, if you look at some of those protests around the world on campuses and what have you, it's the young people, and you're right, it's the young women as much, and they're out there and they're damaging property and they're physically violent. So yeah, it's an increasing trend coming from a society that has no regard for the God that created them.
Okay, just before I ask you, Ate, just this is another interesting graph. So this is broken down into race. You'll see there that young black Gen Zers are the most likely to be violent. Black millennials. But look out the right, baby boomers. It's the whiteys. It's the whiteys like Ashley Church, who's going to be...
Simon.
No, Simon's too busy singing whatever the war song is. Ate, what's your comment just on some of those graphs that you've seen? What's going on?
I agree with what Ashley and Susie have said. It's about just the absence of God and lack of morals and what's been modeled. Unfortunately, I mean, we've seen it here in New Zealand, what they did to Winston Peters' house. That people get away with it, but as people start to do that, then it's the young ones think, oh, we can do that. But domestic violence, where there is insecurity, it manifests itself in violence, and I think that's what we're seeing here in the liberal, amongst the liberals. Hebrew 12 says, "See to it that no one falls short of the grace of God, and that no bitter root come up and cause trouble and defile many." And what we're seeing is the root of bitterness manifesting itself in suicide, in this violence, hatred towards parents, and all the stuff that we've talked about. And again, the university and the media have huge part in course and just sowing these seeds of discord and blaming anything Christian. It's being blamed. So it's an anti-Christ, anti-God stance. And, we're coming back to what is the truth? It's about forgiveness and taking personal responsibility by the grace of God.
Okay, Simon, just from your observation in politics, I struggle to sort of think of conservatives really exhibiting violence or the kind of Black Lives Matter kind of approach of trashing stuff to make a point. Have you seen that? Did these results surprise you in any way?
I don't think I've seen it. I'm sure there are examples, very much outliers, not necessarily in New Zealand, but the results don't surprise me at all, partly because we've seen the international trends. I mean, gosh, you just look on the New Zealand streets and you talked earlier about the rhetoric from the Maori Party. I'm with Ashley insofar as I expect to see an act of violence, particularly against European New Zealanders from a sort of Maori Party acolyte at some point. For at least one of three reasons. It's not just, by the way, the Māori Party. I'm coming back to the wider survey here. I mean, first and foremost, young people in particular are being told that violence is perfectly acceptable. There's an indoctrination, a propaganda into this space, that revolution is sometimes needed. The second is that lack of morality, which everyone's touched on. And what's replaced a common morality, in particular a Christian common morality, is sort of your own view of what is and is not good. And so therefore, if I think good is X, someone who thinks it's Y is wrong, is evil, and should be eliminated. And you'll see that in the discourse. And we've touched on this before. It's no longer that simply ideas are wrong, it's that you're wrong. And so all this rhetoric around fascists and so forth that you hear in New Zealand and around the world leads to the rational, unfortunately, conclusion, as wrong as it is, of what happened to the Charlie Kirks of the world, or the attempts on Trump and so forth. The violence we've seen from pro-Hamas protests here in New Zealand. It's a logical conclusion. And the last point is it's emotion over reason. And we indulge emotion far too much here. Most of us who sit towards the right say that, yeah, you have emotions, they're amoral, but you learn to control them. Where those on the left, the far left, the radical and activist groups say, no, you run with those emotions. If you are angry, then be angry. And if it means removing people violently, then do it, because that's your truth, that's your morality, and that's what we encourage you to do. And the last really quick point, 1 in 7 is terrible. That's 14% of the population. You can affect major social change in a society, the sociologists and anthropologists and others suggest about 5% of people motivated, 14%. That's very, very dangerous. Very dangerous, which I've now said 3 times.
Yeah, very dangerous. Okay. You'll start singing soon. Okay, right. Now, if you did join us late, don't feel bad because we started late. So that's why we're just dragging slightly over time. I do just want to get this final question in, team, and that is, as part of the polling that looked at this political violence, they also asked this question. They said, would you end a relationship with a family member if they expressed a political view that you found inappropriate? Now, you'll note that Gen Z and millennial, the liberal, blue is liberal, and what is that? Pink, red, pink, we'll go with pink. Pink is conservative. Liberals are far more likely to end a relationship with a family member and across all age gaps. And then they said, well, what about a friend? Once again, disproportionately, liberals are supposed to be into inclusivity and tolerance, and they're the most intolerant and exclusive. Simon, is that any surprise?
Well, no, for very similar reasons we just touched on. I mean, firstly, it's emotion over reason, which again, they've always been encouraged just to feel your way through things. And the other is actually a very dehumanizing element to woke progressivism. It's a dehumanizing dynamic, and therefore the notions of relationship with family, friends, work colleagues, or with your God go out the window because it's all about yourself and what you identify with. And so getting rid of your friend, getting rid of your family member, it doesn't matter to them. So, I mean, it's not surprising, but the other stuff which you won't have in these stats is I would think it would be fascinating to correlate that with their anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, as these very people get rid of their family and friends because of their political views and then themselves end up with the miseries that they are.
Well, I can actually answer that. I mean, the fact of the matter is that it's, and I showed these at the forum, that you're more likely to struggle with mental health and anxiety if you're liberal than if you're conservative. Liberal women are the most anxious and struggle the most with mental health, followed by liberal men, then conservative women and conservative men. So it's interesting stats. Susie, I guess the question is, how do you, and I, this was in our list of questions, I said, how do you stay friends with friends and family that you disagree with? How do you get over that hurdle when some people hold some pretty strong views?
I think there needs to be an effort to keep the conversation going. I take the point that everybody has said there's a vacuum of morality, and so people just aren't taught basic things like forgiveness, like tolerance is a stupid word now, but that used to mean something, that you kind of had a certain level of tolerance in your family relationships and your friend relationships. But the main thing is we don't shut people down when they say something that is against what we believe. We keep listening and we keep letting people talk and discuss, and we keep the kōrero going, and that's the most important thing. And I think that's been shut down. What happened when Charlie was shot, I think, is people sort of were arrested in their stupor. I think people kind of realized, wait, he was shot because they wanted to shut him up. And so what I see is that people are letting discourse happen again. I can vouch myself that people who are sliding into my DMs that are wanting to disagree with me on certain things that I post, I invite the conversation and we have coffee, and people are like, okay, cool, let's talk, and not in an argumentative way. So that needs to be done a lot more.
Okay, Ate, do you think families are fracturing because of this?
Absolutely, and I think we saw that with COVID. Many families were absolutely, they were not allowed, they couldn't have Christmas together. Grandparents couldn't see their children, the grandkids. So that was huge. And I think the model of Charlie Kirk when he was pursuing to keep conversation with those who didn't agree with him. And that was I think that's something, as Susie said, and I think at the end of the day, if you are secure in yourself, knowing what you believe, then you can engage with people. But if you are not secure, and you end up not wanting to engage. And I think that's what we need to pursue people to keep the conversation going.
Yep. Just before I come to you, Ashley, just to wrap this all up, this one made me laugh. Koluku says, tough love is sometimes in order. I noticed myself having left-leaning sympathies and found it was best to simply not talk to myself for a week. That's got to be the message of the night. Ashley, does that surprise you, those two graphs, the blue being liberal, the pink being conservative, that conservatives are just more likely to be friendly and welcoming of family members than liberals?
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Hey, so firstly, before I answer that, Susie, sliding into my DMs, where did that come from?
Gosh.
So anyway, to answer your question, it's not that many years ago that we could have stood around a barbecue with somebody who have quite strongly different views and had a conversation with respect and, still been mates and walked away and it not have it affected our entire relationship with that person. So this change has taken place quite quickly. But I'm not surprised. And I tell you, at least one of the major influences, based on the excellent work that you've done, Bob, which has shown us the overwhelming incident of the number of people on the left who operate within our media. When you look at the media narrative around this stuff and the media narrative, which is basically now taking the line that there is only one position, it's the position that we tell you about, and if you don't agree with it, you are wrong and you're dead to me. If that's what's being fed to you, that's what you're going to pick up on, and that's the way you're going to treat other people. So I'm not saying that's the only cause of this, but it's a pretty significant one. Young people, to the extent that they're still consuming mainstream media, are getting one narrative and one narrative only, and that narrative's telling them that anybody who doesn't agree with that is a bigot, is a racist, and shouldn't be listened to and should be discarded from society. So, gosh, what a surprise this has happened.
Yeah. Okay. You've done really well, team, and thank you for staying on longer. And all our viewers seem to have connected in, so that is great. As we said at the very beginning, this is episode number 99. So next Monday is Labor Day. So in honour of the Labor Party, we will obviously take a holiday. And so there's no show next Monday. But the following Monday is a special one because it's our 100th episode. And basically, we are getting every panellist who has been on Straight Talk to come on, and I am giving them a soapbox, and I'm going to give them about 2.5 minutes to give a message of whatever they want to say to social conservatives, to give them the G up, the rah-rah, stiffen their spines, whatever they want to do. So it's going to be an absolute, love fest of panellists. Yeah, it's going to be fun. You better start planning now, Ashley.
Sing a Latin hymn.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll interpret as we go in dance, Simon. So we'll really look forward to that. So that is in 2 weeks. We won't be here next week because it's a public holiday. We were going to talk about public holidays. We'll do that next time. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for hanging in there. Sorry about the late start. And we will see you in 2 weeks for our 100th episode. Until then, have a great night. Yeah.